Hello, my name is Desiree. I am a naturopath who specializes in IBS, and today I wanted to tell you about the journey that brought me to specialize in IBS and that brought me to become a naturopath. So, ever since I can remember as a child, I always had a stomach ache. I always had digestive suffering and trouble. I was always complaining to my mom. I remember going back always being car sick in the car. I always felt nauseous and had motion sickness, and it was just terrible to deal with. It was so difficult to get in a car for even a short drive. I would just want to throw up, and it was really bad. As far back as I can remember, when I think of my childhood and when I hear the recounting of my family members from abroad, everyone always tells me that all I used to eat and all I used to want to eat was pizza, hot dogs, salami, all of these processed junk foods that I clearly loved. Fast food also, I remember eating all of this stuff. And the reason being is that my mom tried so hard to feed me, and I was such a picky eater. And she would even take me to restaurants in the evenings in order to get a meal and just to get some food into me. And of course, in hindsight, looking back at this, I believe that it probably did contribute to my digestive problems. I was also a very nervous, tense child, so a very nervous kid. And again, looking back, I think that contributed as well. So we know now about the mind-body connection and how all of these are deeply interconnected and interrelated. So fast forward a little bit, I was just used to suffering with digestive problems, lots of gas and bloating, being on the toilet for long periods of time, diarrhea sometimes, constipation with very, very painful, almost like a pins and needles effect in the rectum, very painful, alternating bowel movements, never really knowing what to expect. I also remember I had the master bedroom when I was young, lucky me, and in the master bedroom was a bathroom. So I had my own bathroom. And I remember locking myself in the bathroom there for hours and hours and hours. And I was a teenager, so I used to talk on the phone in the bathroom. I used to pull the phone into the bathroom. The cord was outside. And the other reason I was in there was because I had such terrible digestive problems, and all I was trying to do was find relief. So I bought these essential oils and I made my own mixtures and blends. I actually still have those essential oils from when I was a teenager, and they still smell just as good. And I would just spend hours rubbing these essential oils into my belly to try so hard to find relief. I was desperate for relief. Finally, one summer, everything came to a culmination. It was really extreme. I was away at summer camp in the US. I was in Massachusetts as a counselor. And I remember suffering from one of the most debilitating crises, I would say, with my digestive problems. Extreme pain, severe, smelly, sulfuric gas, really, really terrible gas, really embarrassing as well. I was a teenager amongst other youth, and it was embarrassing to be going through this situation. There were certain situations that set off these digestive problems, boy-related, relationship-related at camp, being a young teenager. And I remember that it got so, so bad that I actually had to call my mom and her then boyfriend to drive all the way from Canada to the US to come and pick me up from the summer camp. Now, this was devastating for me because I was a counselor at the camp. I had a job. I was having a lot of fun at the camp. But I couldn't tolerate it anymore. I needed to know what was happening with my digestive system. It had been long enough. I had been sort of pushing it aside all of these years throughout my childhood, my early teenage years, and enough was enough. So I came back home and I started seeking. I didn't know what to look for. I started seeing different specialists. I saw a gastroenterologist who sent me for a colonoscopy and a gastroscopy. I remember how terrifying that was. My brother and my mother brought me to this appointment, and it was really terrifying as a young girl to be going through this. They kind of put you to sleep. I was half asleep. I knew that I'd be drowsy after, and they'd have to take me home, and it was a whole production. And finally, after having these invasive tests done, the results came out that nothing was wrong. which was satisfying, and I was grateful for that. But at the same time, I was also disappointed because I really needed to know, I really needed to have an answer and understand what I was suffering from all these years. Wasn't there some kind of label or term they could put on to help me find a solution? So again, going back to the gastroenterologist's office, I remember him saying, "You have IBS." I had no idea what this was. I later went on to research a little bit. He gave me, I think, some Senecot pills and some pills to help the peristalsis, the movement of my gastrointestinal tract, to smooth things out. And he gave me some Metamucil, some fiber. I looked at these things and I said, this is not for me. This is not what I need. I just sort of intuitively knew that this is not what I needed to take. It was not going to help me relieve my symptoms. And I left it at that. So a few years later, my youngest brother, Nick, got me my second job. So my first job was a hostess at a restaurant. My second job at a health food store in Toronto called Noah's Natural Foods on Eglinton Avenue. And I really didn't know what to expect. I had no idea what this kind of store was. I don't know if I had stepped into one before, but I took the job anyway. It sounded a little bit intriguing. So I ended up working at this store, still having all of my digestive symptoms. They still hadn't stopped because I hadn't found a solution. And I started to discover, I was a cashier, as people went through my register, that they were buying all of these interesting looking different types of foods that I had never seen. All of these alternatives to dairy, alternatives to gluten, different types of pasta, different grains, bulk foods as well. And I started to really become interested and ask questions. So I would hound the customers and say, "Oh, what do you do with this? Oh, how do you cook this? What do you do with this?" And I became extremely fascinated. And what ended up happening was I started to read a lot of articles. So there was this free magazine that the store gave out called the Alive magazine, which they still give out, but it's full of advertisements these days. But it was actually an incredible magazine with great articles, really informative, well-researched articles. And I started to read these articles, and I became fascinated by the fact that, hey, there was an alternative solution for healing your digestive tract. And that led me on my journey. So in combination with consulting with the naturopath on staff, I read about different herbs. I would buy some herbs and plants in bulk and try by myself. This also led me on a journey to see different practitioners now that I knew that they existed. I went to see an osteopath. I went to the naturopathic college to be followed by the students. I got put on a very strict diet called the brown rice diet, which was actually excruciatingly painful. This diet was so bland and so boring, and it was really hard to follow, but I did follow it. And I did follow all of the recommendations. I took the supplements that they recommended, and I almost became obsessed with this process. After a period of time of following this program very strictly, I realized that all my symptoms went away. I felt so much better. It was actually incredible. And what was the most empowering for me was that I knew how to take care of my health right now. I knew that I could fall back on these remedies whenever I needed and take them and start feeling amazing again. A few years later, into my early 20s, I traveled to India, and I had a resurgence of my digestive trouble. I was diagnosed with parasitic infection. I had extreme urgent diarrhea, running to the bathroom. It actually ruined my trip, I would say. It actually ruined my 2-month trip. A lot of terrible, horrible gas. I feel like all the symptoms that I had from my childhood actually came back. Very smelly, sulfuric gas, urgent diarrhea, like I said, painful, cramping, terrible, terrible digestive problems. I remember going to the Ayurvedic clinic in the small town that I was staying at and getting some IV. I was extremely dehydrated one night from all the diarrhea. I also went to see Tibetan doctors because I was in a Tibetan Dharamsala, which was a Tibetan town. And I went to see also the local medical practitioners. I was put on all sorts of huge tablets of antibiotics, rounds and rounds and rounds of antibiotics, and still this was not clearing for me. So, by the way, I also prepared myself for India by taking grapefruit seed extract and garlic, and nothing really helped me. And when I came back, I knew that I had parasites. I just knew it, whether or not my stool showed it or not. I had some stool testing done in Canada, and nothing really showed up. But I went on a parasitic cleanse for 6 months, and seeing as that I knew how to finally take care of my gut, I knew what I needed. So I went on this parasitic cleanse for 6 months, and I was able to reestablish balance and balance my digestive tract so well. Thank goodness, up until today, I've been free and clear of IBS symptoms for the most part. Sometimes they'll come back again, never a flare up. It came around my pregnancy, I would say, with my son after he was born. Really kind of terrible digestive problems, but I knew that was hormone related. But as of today, thank goodness, I have smooth, easy bowel movements. Normally after a meal, it's effortless. I don't feel my digestion, which I would say many of my clients constantly feel their digestive tract. I used to also hold in, very tense, my digestive organs, my tummy area, my abdominal area. I don't do that anymore. Everything is loose, comfortable. I'm able to have comfortable bowel movements. If I do have periods of gas, it passes really quickly. I take really good care of my digestion through my diet, through the supplements that I take. But thank goodness that I have been able to heal myself of IBS, because it was really difficult to suffer from that for such a long period of time, all the way from childhood into my 20s, and now I can finally say that I'm free of IBS. So if you have any questions for me about my process, please feel free to reach out. I'd be glad to help you and share my experience with you. Thank you so much for watching, and take amazing care. Bye, guys. Take care.